Hanyu was one of the most important writers of the entire Tang Dynasty. He lived from 768 to 824, right in the heart of China's cultural golden age. He helped lead a literary movement to revive classical prose writing across the empire. Even today, more than 1,000 years later, students all over China memorize his essays. But Hanyu was also a poet with a remarkably sharp eye for tiny moments. He could take one small, quiet observation and make it feel enormous and significant. This poem is a perfect example of that special gift for close observation. It captures a single bird singing before winter has even finished loosening its grip. The poem is called Hearing an Oriole in the Snow of Early Spring. Picture the scene. It is still winter, but something in the air has shifted. Snow still covers the trees, yet a small bird has already begun to sing. That is the entire quiet scene that Hanyu wants us to stop and notice. Here is how the poem opens, with a couplet that feels almost like a painting. Morning orioles appear anew, bright and fresh against the lingering white snow. Snow-laden trees bring spring right before our eyes, even in the deep cold. Right away, Hanyu gives us a contradiction that makes us lean in closer. It is still snowing, yet he insists that what we are seeing is spring. The oriole is new, meaning it has only just arrived in this frozen landscape. And the snow on the trees somehow becomes a sign of spring, not winter. He sees the season turning before anyone else around him has noticed it yet. The bird is the messenger, arriving ahead of schedule with news of a change. It shows up before the season itself is ready to welcome it properly. That premature arrival is exactly what makes this particular moment feel so special. The next two lines take us deeper into the bird's own physical experience. With a husky, rough voice, the oriole greets the warming air before anyone else. Braving the bitter cold, it announces the coming season to anyone who will listen. The bird's voice is still rough because it has not fully warmed up yet. That roughness is exactly what makes the whole detail feel honest and real. That small, imperfect voice is the detail I love most about this poem. The bird is not singing beautifully, not yet, and it knows that perfectly well. It is struggling and pushing through the cold, refusing to wait for comfort. There is real courage packed into that tiny, rough, and incomplete little voice. Now Hanyu shifts to a pointed question about what it is we actually value. Everyone prizes the thrill of hearing the very first oriole song of the year. But who cares about the repeated listening, once the novelty has worn off? He is asking why we only pay attention to the very first sign of something. The first time we hear the oriole each year, we are genuinely thrilled. But when the woods fill with birdsong weeks later, nobody stops to listen anymore. Hanyu is quietly making a point about how we treat people around us too. We celebrate the pioneer who arrives first and forget the steady worker who stays. Then he gets more specific about what the early bird's song actually sounds like. A brief trill, just a few notes, can scarcely form anything like a melody. And one lone call, however brave, can hardly match the fullness of the season. One short burst of song is simply not the same as a complete musical phrase. And one bird alone, no matter how eager, cannot fill the entire morning with sound. The oriole is early, but it is also completely alone and still incomplete. There is something genuinely brave about it, and also something quietly sad about it. Now the poem widens its lens, pulling back from the bird to the whole landscape. Wind and frost merely guard themselves, protecting no one but their own cold domain. How can the peach and plum trees, blooming later, be companions to such harshness? The peach and plum bloom later, in warmth and ease, far from the early cold. They have nothing to do with the frost and the brave little bird at all. Hanyu is drawing a clear line between the tough and the comfortable here. The bird and the frost belong to the hard, early, unforgiving world of winter. The flowers belong to the easy, warm world that arrives comfortably later on. Now the last two lines bring everything together with a surprising turn. Send thanks, the poem says, to the friend who dwells quietly in seclusion. whose tireless effort and hard work is never, ever for his own benefit. Anew himself was exiled and demoted from his official posts more than once. He kept writing and speaking the truth regardless of what it cost him personally. The orioles singing in the snow is really Anew himself, arriving too early, showing up before the world is ready, before anyone has asked for his song, singing with a rough and imperfect voice right in the middle of the cold. And that is exactly what makes this small, quiet poem so deeply moving.
朝鶯雪里新，雪树眼前春。带澀先迎气，侵寒已报人。共矜初听早，谁贵后闻频？暂囀那成曲，孤鸣岂及辰。风霜徒自保，桃李詎相亲。寄谢幽栖友，辛勤不为身。